Do you guys have this issue? This is summer 2011. I guess this is getting old now. But in summer of 2011, I wrote this article called Steady Rest, Conquer the Long and Thin. But we're coming back to this. There's a few things here. There's a few things from this article I want to read, and one of them is answer to your question. Yeah. Oh yeah, I find that they're difficult to set up. There's a lot of adjustments to make. Two, it interferes with the tool rest because it obstructs the front. However, there is one that has two wheels, which I think is really designed for bowls, I'm not sure. That the soft plastic wheels are bouncy because they're rubber. They're plasticized rubber. And chips stick on the surface, which causes that surface to be rough because it's actually compressing. So as the chips, especially pine or something that's a little sticky, those chips tend to build up on there between the wheel and the workpiece. And also, each wheel is a dangerous pinch point, right? So there's no dangerous wheels that can pinch your fingers or clothing or anything in this type of steady rest. I'm just going to talk about a couple of things that are in this article. Right here in the front is a picture taken from Frank Payne's book. You guys ever seen this book? Anyone here has ever seen this book? Okay, 2, 3, 4 people. So when I learned wood turning in the beginning, in the Stone Age, there were only 3 books. There was Peter Child, and there was this, and there was the dubious books from Delta. All right. And so this book and Peter Child, these are both Brits who wrote. This book was actually compiled from magazine articles that he wrote in the 50s. But this book really opened. I mean, when I read this book, I said, "Oh my God, I'm doing this completely wrong." And I had to unlearn everything that my 7th grade shop teacher taught me and start over. And I'm standing before you today so that you don't have to go through that same unlearning and relearning process. The reason I have always lectured on basics is because I think you get beginners pointed in the right direction early on. Instead of saying, "Oh, here, use this scraper because that's more foolproof." I think that teachers do a great disservice to students when they show them the wrong way to do it because they think that they'll be able to handle it. Anyway, very fascinating book. I learned so much about chisel shapes and, of course, about what cutting tools were and using the bevel to guide the tool rather than simply scraping things. Okay. F. Payne, P-A-I-N, Frank Payne.
Is it still in print?
Good question. I don't know. I don't know. But this picture appeared in Frank Payne's book, and this is the type of steady rest that they used in the middle of the 20th century in England, where they were mass producing furniture parts by hand. And what I found was that it was nothing but a stick with a notch in it that rubbed against the wood. Let me just see here.
John, could you hold that picture up close to the camera, do a Captain Eddie thing?
And it was a contraption that was simply wedged in between the ways of the wooden ways of the bed in their shop. The wedge, the little stick tilts forward and back and was held in place by a wedge. But anyway, at that time, I was experimenting with steady rests that had metal wheels, ball bearing wheels, right? And of course, they don't work. They work great on metal, right, Ron? Yeah. But they don't work at all on wood because wood has hard and soft layers. And as those metal wheels indent the soft layers, the surface upon which the wheels are riding becomes rough. And now this steady rest is imparting vibrations to the workpiece instead of eliminating them. So that definitely doesn't work. So I said, why does this low-tech system with no moving parts work better than the high-tech idea of having a wheel? And the answer is surface area, right? So this shoe, especially after it breaks into a particular shape, has enough surface area in contact with the workpiece that it bridges over the rings or the hard and soft layers of the wood, right? And that's what makes this soft wood shoe work better than something with wheels. Well, you see the shape, it's kind of parabolic, right? The main thing is that it contacts the work in two places. It's not intended to contact the work over the arc, all right? So that the bottom radius of the shoe is smaller than the radius of the work, so that it only contacts in two places, above and below. It pushes from the back. Here. Can the camera see that?
Yep. Yeah.
All right. So you see, and there's a space at the bottom. That's very important, right? And so the shoe doesn't have to be specific to exact size. It operates over a pretty broad range. Leather. No, because leather would have a huge friction, right? And so here's the thing. I put a little paraffin on the wood, right? And eventually the shoe gets impregnated with paraffin. So the lubricant is in the wood. And then after that, you don't really have to use hardly anything on the workpiece. I'm gonna read two very short passages from the article because I don't think I can improve on the way this is stated. There are two types of problems associated with long and thin spindle turnings. The first is high frequency chatter mentioned before. In other words, you saw, when I took the steady rest away, you saw the workpiece chattering. And if you looked at the finish that produced, that would be this part right here, which was produced when I took the steady rest away. It's a very bad finish. Right, the first problem is high frequency chatter, which leaves spiral bands or lumps on the work. The second is the phenomenon of the work climbing up and over the chisel, which is a kind of catch. The steady rest will cure both. Right, so when you have a long, very thin piece, as it starts to vibrate, it's wanting to lift. And eventually it can lift enough that it goes up over on top of the chisel, and then boing, and then it goes back. And then, what causes workpiece vibration? Well, Frank Payne says that one thing that causes workpiece vibration is that the wood has a different flexibility with the grain and across the grain. And that may be true, and I think different woods vary in that. But I think what triggers a lot of workpiece vibration is the annular rings in the wood. Because especially in oak and ash and those kind of ring porous wood, you have these hard and soft layers, and as the chisel passes through those layers, that's what triggers the vibration, I think, right? Because it's a much higher frequency than twice per revolution, which would be what Payne suggests. So here's the quote that I want to read to you. In final analysis, we should remember that a bow can play an infinite number of notes on a violin, serving only to stimulate the natural harmonic frequencies already present in the string. In the same way, every wood turning has certain frequencies that it tends to vibrate. And all we have to do whilst turning is not encourage it, or failing that, at least not give it room to achieve significant amplitude. So that's the theory. So in the strategies, so there's 8 strategies. I can read the strategies very quickly. Use wood that is hard and smooth. So if you have maple, birch, or cherry, right, diffuse porous woods work better on steady rest, and you'll get less vibration. 2, Calculate the finished length of the turning and cut the wood to the final length before you start. Right? Do not leave extra length to be cut off later. Length is the enemy. Right? So if you don't know exactly what the final length of that table leg is going to be, you're not ready to turn yet. Right? You need to know that length, cut them off to that 29 1/4 or whatever, bang. Right? Don't cut them off later. Carefully consider the location of the steady. We're going to get to that about starting the steady rest. Engage the steady rest as the first step. Don't wait until the vibration becomes a problem. Kill it before it starts. I already said that. Start work in the middle of the turning. I already said that. In the final stages, you move it over. Use a gouge with a small nose radius, one that will produce a narrow chip. Use a slower speed than you would normally use, and experiment with different speeds to find out one that does not reinforce the resonant vibration frequencies. And then the very last thing in the article is the role of tailstock force. It says here, a lathe is not a vice. And you know, what's funny about this is that this is a lesson that I learned much later than I should have. You know, for a long time, I thought, well, maybe I can get this to vibrate less if I just tighten a little more. And of course, it's the opposite, because the more you tighten, the more you're actually pushing the, like we were just saying, if you pull on the work, you actually could quell vibration. So obviously pushing does the opposite. Long and thin workpiece should be held with a minimum force from the tailstock. To accomplish this, your centers need to be well tuned. Spurs should be sharp as a chisel, and all the same length. All right. If the center point is too long, it will inhibit the entry of the spurs, making excessive force necessary.